so excited to offer an Authors Day where my dear favorite colleague, Sylvia, and I are going to talk about our books and our interest in dreams, which is tapping into the creative power of dreams. And we're just so happy to have you all here. And what we're going to do is we're aiming for about an hour. We want to introduce ourselves in a few minutes. We're going to introduce ourselves and do just a brief reading from our books. And then we pose some questions for each other, which I have found brand new territory that I've never talked about. And I hope that's true for Tivia as well. And then we're going to open it up to Q&A from all of you. My feeling is it's a little distracting to read the chat for questions. So hold your questions until we invite you to Q&A. And then hopefully you can raise your computer hand or your physical hand and wave, and we'll call on you. And please try and make sure you have your name in the underneath your image, not your spouse's or somebody else's name. And then we're going to have a brief activity for everybody, and that very easy but very entertaining for your dreams to contribute to the day. And then we're going to invite you to stay afterwards. So we're aiming to end in an hour, but we hope that you'll stay on, and we'll just have a casual conversation after that. So also, we would like to invite you, if you're so interested, to stay, to put your email in the chat if you want to get follow-up. We'll send the information in the chat in a follow-up, and if you want to follow through on this particular event, we would like you to just drop in your email. We don't want to assume that you want a bunch of emails from us. So without further ado, I'd like to hand over to Sylvia, who is a true dream sister for me. We are so on the same channel, and yet we're coming from different persuasions. I'm coming from a visual perspective, and Sylvia is coming from creative writing, and yet we intersect so seamlessly. So I think you'll find today very interesting in how we intersect, and that's what we want to share with you. Sylvia.
And I think it's a beautiful, a dreamy coincidence or something that Victoria is the artist, and primarily, although she's also an award-winning author. And she's in the black and white, and I am the print girl who usually shows up on the page in black and white, and I am wearing the colors. So we are mixing it, we are matching it, we are going in all different directions. So I'm going to introduce myself and my work, which is really encapsulated in my book, Dreaming on the Page, a book that many of you know and are familiar with. It's a book that's just chock full of tips and techniques for combining dreams, your nighttime dreams, your visions, and writing. So I'm going to share a few slides as I sort of read to you from the introduction from the book, because that's a great way to introduce myself. And I've already edited it since it's in print, so it just seems like a wonderful way to get us going. So, of course, my dreams took up the job of being my writing coach at a very young age. I had a journal that where I wrote everything that was going on in my daytime life and my dreams. And in that dream journal, when I was about 20 years old, I wrote, "My dreams give me advice on writing. They say, get the idea out first, then leave it for a day or two and come back." That's good advice for any aspiring writer. And that came to me when I was 20 in my dream. And in that same journal, sort of sandwiched in between my outpourings about friendships and conflicts and games of pool, I wrote a few lines that became my Ars Poetica, my sort of creative mission statement. And I wrote in my journal and then I typed it up in this little booklet that I made of my poetry. I am a dreamer, a writer without words. I am a writer, a woman who wants to share her dreams. And I wrote those down at age 20, and then I forgot all about them. And in the intervening years, I worked as a journalist at a county newspaper. I was the director of a poetry program for teen moms. I became a professional dream worker. And I kept debating in my mind, what is my mission in life? What's my purpose? Am I a dreamer? Am I a writer? Should I focus on dream work? Should I focus on writing? But 20-year-old me knew all along. I kept journals all those years, starting at age 12, and they've accompanied me all along my journey. And, in these journals, I record everything. As you can see, I paste things in, and I record my dreams. And those dreams have helped me locate a place to live. They've advised me to stay put in a job when I wanted to leave and prodded me forward when it was time to go. And they've helped me with relationships. They helped me find my husband. And they weigh in on literary matters. So this is also what happens when you keep a lot of journals. They really start to pile up. I have a whole closet full of them, and they spill over into the basement. But literary figures have literally come to visit me in my dreams. Robert Frost has had a cameo appearance, Emily Dickinson, and Stanley Kunitz popped in and gave me some advice. He said, hold the object in your hand before you put it in a poem. That's what he told me in a dream, and I thought it was excellent advice, so I'm sharing it with you. So I'm not alone in this. Writers have been inspired by their dreams. We have our friend Bill, right, the bard, Amy Tan. We have Mary Shelley. Frankenstein came to her in a dream. Langston Hughes's poetry is packed with dreams, as are one of my teachers, Lucille Clifton. Stephen King made a mint from making his nightmare imagery into stories. Toni Morrison relied on visions and dreams. Sue Monk Kidd. The Twilight series came to Stephanie Meyer in a dream, and Fiddler on the Roof by Sholem Aleichem has dreams interspersed. So I hope that you will be the next one to be inspired by your dreams. Victoria and I are offering books and workshops in Santa Fe in May and September. We've got those links in the chat for you. So we're here today to sort of get you excited and join this journey with us. I know a lot of you are already on this journey. So I want to stop the share now and pass this on to Victoria, who's going to introduce herself and her work and how dreams and creativity have guided her journey.
Well, I am so honored to share this Zoom with Sivia, and we are so parallel, and yet we're so different. Sivia is coming from the writing persuasion, and I'm coming from the visual arts persuasion, and yet we totally intersect in our work. So I'll quickly just introduce myself through our books, for one thing. So we both have exercises and ways to access the creative aspects of our dreams. It's so much of what we both believe in. In my workshops, we actually write, illustrate, and bind a book in every workshop. And that will be true for workshops that Sivia and I are offering in May and September, which we'll talk about in a minute. This is my studio. This is the Dreaming Arts Studio in Santa Fe. So hopefully some of you will be able to plan your 2025 to come to gorgeous Santa Fe and share dreams with us. It's going to be extraordinary what we are offering and has never been offered before. And my feeling is that dreams are about creativity. And so we create books, we do collages, and we will, of course, be doing some creative writing with Sylvia. And I'll tell you more as we go along. So, Sylvia and I have asked each other questions. So we're going to start by asking each other questions, and then we're going to invite you to ask your questions. So hold your questions. It's a little distracting, at least for me, to read the chat while we're talking. So hold your questions off for a minute. And when we do the Q&A, we'll ask you to either physically hold your hand up, or if you know how to do the hand to hold in the chat, do that. And hopefully we'll get a conversation going with all of us. But Sylvia, I'd like to start by asking you what all of us are interested in. You have a dream and you want to write. What is it that's the intermediary between having the dream and doing some creative writing with it?
Yeah, absolutely. So the good news is that it's pretty simple. The trick is, I think, to remember those dreams. So if you wake up with a dream, replay it in your mind before you even open your eyes. You notice that you have a dream, just stay and replay it a little in your mind. And if you can, tell it to someone, your cat, your dog, if you have a bed partner, if you can say it out loud, because that helps anchor these sort of like eel-like dreams that want to slip away into your mind. And then the simplest thing to do is you write it in your journal. And then you take what you've written, and I'll give you two quick, instant ways to make a creative writing out of your dream. Number one is just write the dream down as if it's a poem with line breaks, edit it only lightly, and read it back to yourself, and you will probably find a little poem in there. The other quick trick is just to change the pronoun. So if you usually write your dream down in first person, which we do recommend, I was running through a hallway, change it to he or she or they. She was running through a hallway, and you might see you have a story there, or you were running through a hallway. That gives you a little bit of distance so you can start to find the story or something creative in that dream text. So what about you, Victoria? Do you have any response or thoughts on where you go with that?
Yes, I do. I really don't like to talk when I'm waking up. So the first thing I do before I run anywhere or think about what I have to do that day is I get the dream written down with a small flashlight and a pen, which is right by the bed, and I just get the facts, the quick facts down. Then my process is to, when I do actually wake up and get up for the day, is again trying to stay backwards, not running into what's going to happen during the day. I make a cup of tea. I turn on my computer because I'm not as much of a handwriter. I love my mind to keyboard self, and I flesh in that dream. I read it, I flesh in the dream. I also, interestingly, write it in poetic stanzas. It's not that I'm trying to make a poem. It's just that I break the lines up so that every image is punchy. And so in that way, we really do the same kind of thing. But then what I really like to do is deconstruct the dream, and I take the images apart. Who is that person that's in the dream? Who is Mother? Who is Robert Frost? What is a flashlight? What is an alligator? And I just try to give myself a few moments to just deconstruct, and then and the most important thing is being curious. What is a flashlight? To think about that as an image, as opposed to looking it up in a dream symbol dictionary. I just try to keep it very personal about what I think. And that's really my first go-to technique.
I love that. I love that. Victoria, I have a question for you too. What was your journey? See, I knew you first as a visual artist. So I want to know, what was your journey from being primarily a visual artist to wanting to explore dreams and writing as you've done so beautifully in your most recent book?
Well, Sylvia, we did plan this in advance. So I was thrilled with that question. And I have come up with a little share. So it was such a great question because, as you said, the first thing I do is write in a poetic stanza. So these are dreams that I just simply broke the lines up, and I'm not trying to be a poet. I'm just trying to be poetic. And so sometimes I feel just the one line I pull from the dream is so powerful. And of course, I'm doing this visually, but I can use that background. I love my computer. And so maybe I just repeat that phrase over and over and over again. And that gives such a lot of punch to the one little drawing that I come up with. So that's one thing I do for the background of my collages. I love the titles. The titles are so interesting. We'll talk about that in a minute, but I'm very interested in one of the things that I do when I start to record my dream is always to title the dream. And that means I can always find it again in the future. And it also gives me a leg up on what's the essence, what's the one thing I really want to say about the dream. And I'll turn that into graphics for no other reason than that they're just so delightful. So these are blocks that I've done with just the titles. And then I turn them into blocks with collage. And that also, then I start to take those titles and put them into image. This is what I love best, is to just do found imagery poem. So again, I don't see myself as a poet or a writer, but found image and found text is so powerful for me that it turns out I can use that in my artwork. So these are some drawings that I've done in the past that after doing the collage, so I should back up a little and say that most of my creative work begins with collage in the studio with my dream groups. And every Tuesday we go into the studio and we find images, we find text that brings the dream into more dramatic form than I can really rustle up by myself. So then after class, I may make an artwork that really enhances the value of the words that I've found and maybe add to it.
No. No, no.
And so again, I just
no, away.
Love the fact that Sylvia and I both come to the same kind of work in completely different ways. And so I hand it over now to Sylvia. Let me stop my screen share. Sylvia, we are journeying from, I'm journeying from the visual to the writing, and you're going from writing to the visual. So can you talk a little bit about your process?
Absolutely. So the first place that the visual comes into my dream work is in my journal. Well, first of all, the dreams, right? So dreams are interesting because as a writer, dreams don't particularly love the written word. It's very hard to write in your dream. And it's very rare to see legible writing in your dream. When you think about it, dreams predate writing by millennia, right? We were dreaming long before we had the technology of writing. That said, dreams speak in the language of imagery. So that's a gift to the writer because we love metaphor and we love symbol and we love vivid imagery in our writing. But, my medium is usually words, but the dream journal brings them together. This is my current dream journal. I often collage my dream covers, my journal covers. I often collage them. And also, when I'm writing down a dream, I naturally sometimes start to draw it. But collage really speaks to me as the bridge, because just like dreams, when you put imagery together, you're putting two unrelated images next to each other, just like the dream does. The dream is always putting unusual combination of things together, right? So I play with that a lot. After I've had a dream, I'll often go into my pile of magazines and images and just start cutting things out without thinking. I'm thinking about the dream, I'm holding it lightly in my mind. So these are two examples of collages I've made, just contemplating the dream. And then I usually give myself a time limit, just 20 minutes or something like that, or 40, whatever I have time for. I usually use a timer because otherwise I'll get lost all day in this. And also that gentle pressure of time makes me do something and not just freeze, because art is a little more intimidating to me. And then the collage becomes its own dream. So this was a dream I had. Literally, I dreamt about this sculpture that's in Jerusalem. And it was a really powerful dream for me. And so I made this collage in response. And you can see it doesn't exactly look like the sculpture, but it's a new dream now. And it incorporates not just the letters from the sculpture, with, by the way, spell ahava, which means love. It's the same sculpture as the love sculpture in the US, LOVE, in a block like that by the same artist. But my dream, when I put the colors and everything behind it, got at some of the emotion from the dream that doesn't show up. The dream looked just like the image on the right, on the left. And the emotion in the dream gets picked up by the collage imagery. So those are just some examples of how I go back and forth. So Victoria, I want to ask you another question. Well, actually, we have a question for each other, right? You were going to ask me, but I think we're both going to answer this one too.
Who's going to ask first, Sylvia?
I'll ask. You go ahead.
Okay, so this question is, what's one misconception that people have about dreams and dream writing? Can you share a new perspective that most people don't really grok?
Well, this is a pretty basic one. And I'm just going to sort of be untraditional here, because the number one thing we're told about dreams is, write them all down. Write down all your dreams. And what I find is that this scares people away because it can get overwhelming. If you're like me, I remember 3, 4, 5 dreams every morning. But even if you're just remembering 3 or 5 every week, it can become very time consuming to write every dream down. And I had a dream teacher once. I was sort of bragging on my great dream recall and, oh, aren't I fancy? I remember all these dreams. And she responded, you only need a handful of dreams in your whole life. That's plenty to work on. And that kind of took me aback, and it kind of put me in my place. And I realized that I don't have to write every single one down. I can pick and choose. And I say that because for some people, when they start writing down every dream, they get exhausted and then they give up the whole enterprise. So I think it's best to advise to pace yourself. Sometimes less is more. And I want to mention that when we do our dream retreat in May, we're going to encourage people. It's a 5-day retreat in Victoria's magical studio in Santa Fe. And there'll be 5 teachers. And we're going to and recommend that people choose one dream and work on it for all 5 days. So with all the different teachers sharing their different techniques, applying it to the same dream. And that's a fascinating thing to do. And you really do learn that you don't need that many dreams. So write them down when you can, but don't pressure yourself to write down every dream. But don't tell anybody I told you that, because that goes against everything that every other dream teacher is going to tell you.
Well, in response to that, I totally disagree. I say,
I know you do.
Dream. Because when we're in the dream state, we are so present. We're not monkey mind. So if we're flying or breathing underwater, it's no big deal. So we scribble this down on our pad of paper, we rewrite, and we look at it in the morning and say, oh my God, I thought this dream was nothing. And it turns out it was amazing. But that judgment that comes in the morning that says, oh, this is not a special dream, I totally wipe that out. So I say, write every dream down. And what a thrill to start your day with a dream, should you have one. That being said, some people don't dream every day. Maybe they only have one dream in their life, and that makes us a dreamer. So that also qualifies us to work on these workshops that Sylvia and I are going to do. We're doing 2 different workshops, one in May with an all-star cast, which we'll send you information on with our fellow authors. And then Sylvia and I are going to do one, just the 2 of us, in September. And we'll send you all that information, but both are going to be working with one dream over a course of time. So whatever works for you, I think that's the most important thing. But in answer to the original question is, what's one misconception? And my answer to that is, most people think that dreams are a pathological event, that we have to go to a shrink. We have to be psychoanalyzed because we're nuts, because the dream is so disturbing or so unnerving or so confusing. And for me, the one message I'd like to give you that's the clearest is, yes, dreams can be all of the above, but where Sylvia and I intersect is that dreams are the source of creativity. And a lot of people don't understand the artistic source, that we think we make art. But if you talk to any of the great artists in our history, it's art that's received. We get inspiration. Where does it come from? Now, it takes a lot of hard work to manifest that into an actual artwork, but the inspiration is not something we can take credit for. So when we go to sleep at night, we're just receiving. And that beautiful dream is our fundamental creative spark. And so we don't need to be making art. We're receiving it, and then come into the studio and see where it leads. And that's where Sylvia and I come in with our workshops. So I would really like to encourage you to realize that we're all artists, and all we have to do is go to sleep at night.